We're talking actors and directors who put on the shows.
We're talking playwrights and designers who you'll want to know.
From the very first rehearsal to the final curtain call.
We might be off Broadway, but we're talking about it all.
'Cause we're two local gals
With global pals, it's everything, everything, everything theater.
with Benita
And Ellen. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everything Theater Podcast Backstage episode. I'm Ellen Cribbs.
And hi there, I'm Benita Zahn. And we really have our backstage look on today too, Ellen. You're in a funky tee and I'm in a little running tee, shirt. We're hunkered in because we have a lot to share. Of course, about the maestro himself, recently passed, Stephen Sondheim.
Yes, absolutely. And we had such an outpour of love for this episode. And before we jump into that, let me just remind everyone that this episode is sponsored by Harbinger Theater. They are doing The Christians by Lucas Nath. They opened this past weekend. They have one weekend left coming up, so please check it out. If I didn't have a horrendous cold, I would have been there. But the reviews have been great. It's about a pastor who's the leader of a mega church, and he decides he doesn't believe in hell anymore, and he tries to bring the congregation along with him, and he discovers that these new ideas and change can offer their own torment. And it's staged as a church service with a whole choir. It looks like an amazing production, so check it out. It is the final weekend coming up here, Thursday through Sunday, which is the December 9th through 12th. Check it out.
Hoping to get there on the 9th, the 10th. We've got tickets for Selling Cobble and down in the city. And then we're going to catch the Lehman trilogy.
Very nice.
Sunday. But we're back and forth, kind of crazy. And, Jerry Gretzinger and I were performing this past weekend. We have our holiday show. So, you can't be everywhere. It's, what is it? The old expression translated says you can't dance at two weddings with one hiney.
No.
We try. We definitely try. And I should point out that The Christians got a lovely review by Paula Moore in the Schenectady Gazette. So if you want to read a little bit more about the show, although Ellen, of course, gave it a great send up, take a look in the Gazette to read Paul's words. It's a fascinating show and very, very timely.
And you know what? I just realized I misspoke. There is no Sunday performance. It only goes through Saturday, the 11th. So if you want to catch it, don't wait till Sunday because no one will be there.
We can help tear down the set, but
yeah. I'm sure they'll love that.
Right.
But yeah, so moving on to we weren't planning on talking about this today, but then the news of Sondheim's passing happened. And Benita, I feel like there's like certain celebrities that like you'll just always remember where you were when you hear about their passing. And for me, Sondheim was one of them. Like I'll just always remember sitting on my couch surrounded by family who was visiting, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, let me just check something on my phone, and seeing it and just trying not to cry in front of everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And just a few days earlier, there'd been, he'd been interviewed, was talking about the work that he's still, his latest work. And I thought, wow, 91, look what he's doing, and it did. It just stopped. When you read it, I turned to my husband and I go, Sondheim died.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, 91 and still working. I mean, what an inspiration. I'm glad we got so much work from him while he was on this earth.
And then have you seen Tick, Tick, Boom?
I have not yet. I have heard such amazing things. Well,
Sondheim is referenced because he had felt, and Jonathan Larson felt, it's set on the eve of his 30 year, just before he turns 30. And that Sondheim had already, at 27, I think it was, had already done, or 26, 27, already been on Broadway. And what about me? And how do I catch up? And it's as if he knew he had a very short time, but but sometimes figures, looms over that story as well. So to see it right after Sondheim's passing, sort of bookended the acceptance, managing, dealing with that passing in that time. Yeah. But see Tick, Tick, Boom.
Yes, I'm definitely. My mom's going to visit, and I think we'll watch it together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, we set out once this happened, we asked you folks, everybody who listens to the podcast, who has a conversation on our Facebook page, on Twitter when I'm not, when I attend to it better. Ellen's much better on Facebook, to share with us your thoughts and the first show and songs and basically everything Sondheim.
Mm-hmm. And we see that the first one is Cassie says, the song I Remember from Evening Primrose made me feel so seen and understood during the first lockdown of COVID. I think about that all the time.
If there was nothing else, if no one else had a comment,
Yeah.
Yeah. Jessica says that Sweeney Todd is and will always be her favorite show. It's the show that ignited her passion for musical theater. She said that she was working at the parking garage for the Milwaukee Performing Arts, also known as the Marcus Center. When she started when she was 15, and Saturdays were long and boring. So she saved up for a portable DVD player to pass the time. Back when Netflix came in the mall, I saw this weird show with Angela Lansbury about a cannibal barber. I got to watch it on my next shift and was absolutely enthralled. Up to that point, I thought musicals were just innocent fluff and really didn't have a whole lot of interest in them. But this was dark and moody and funny, and the music was absolutely amazing. Musicals can be all of these things. Who knew? I credit that day as my introduction to my greatest passion, and I have Sondheim to thank for it. And, Ellen, you and I have talked about this. Musical theater is the only true form of American theater.
Right. Yeah.
Start somewhere else. And we all know some, I'll joke and say drama-rama types about musical theater.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know how anyone can do that once you have been exposed to the work of Stephen Sondheim, just like Jessica. And you've done Sweeney Todd?
No, but it's my favorite show.
And having recently done it right before the world shut down, the most difficult music. Yeah. You have to pay attention.
And it's, it's so fascinating because Sondheim was mentored by Oscar Hammerstein, who's like such the iconic classic, theater of like the feel good, right. And so it's crazy to see that Sondheim has such a unique voice coming from that mentorship.
Yeah, especially when he first started and after Funny Thing, because that was a different, the language and the rhyming and is fabulous, but who he became as a lyricist later. But, much was written that people said, but you can't hum his tunes when you leave the theater. Because that was the Hammerstein.
Right.
It was a change-up.
Yeah. Yeah. But you sure learn them afterwards. You get the soundtrack and you memorize every word. Let's see. Erica says, quote, sometimes people leave you halfway through the wood. Do not let it grieve you. No one leaves for good. You are not alone. No one is alone. Hold him to the light now. Let him see the glow. Things will be all right now. Tell him what you know. Playing the baker's wife was one of the highlights of my performing career. I connected with that character on so many levels and felt these lyrics so deeply every time I sang them. Mr. Sondheim's passing is just so, so sad. He just seemed like a legend who would live forever.
Alex says, I'll give you 3, all from Sunday in the Park. The last one is my favorite, and the other 2 are tied for a very close second. As an artist, these lyrics resonate so soundly within me. 1, stop worrying if your vision is new. Let others make that decision. They usually do. You keep moving on, which sounds as if he was writing from his own life, right?
Yeah.
The second was anything you do, let it come from you, then it will be new. Give us more to see. Order, design, tension, composition, balance, light, dot. I cannot read this word. Harmony. The fact that above all other properties that make up art, harmony is the most important. It brings me to tears every single time.
Yeah. So much about art. He just wrote from the heart.
The first time I saw that show, I wasn't crazy about it.
Yeah.
You too?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Because the 2 acts are
Yeah.
like from different planets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I also wasn't crazy about a little night music the very first time. But
Interesting.
it could have been because we got caught in a rainstorm. I was with a friend and we were sitting in the very last row. So we were wet and the theater was overheated and far away. And I came to love that show. But the first time I went, ugh.
Yep. So, some of his plays do kind of grow on you over time. Where the first watching, you're like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
let's see. Sean says, I'll also give you 3. Number 1, tragedy tomorrow, comedy tonight. With 4 words, Sondheim sums up what a night at the theater means, a break from our real world troubles. Not to mention I played hero in Forum, and it turned out to be one of the most meaningful shows I've been a part of. Number 2, I thought you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. Heartbreaking. Send in the Clowns belongs in the discussion of the best show tunes of all time. And number 3, my father is a bastard. My ma's an SOB. My grandpa's always plastered. My grandpa pushes tea. My sister wears a mustache. My brother wears a dress. Goodness gracious, that's why I'm a mess. Sondheim could be as laugh out loud funny as he could be heartbreaking. West Side Story was my first favorite musical, and I wanted to play action just so I could sing Gee, Officer Crumpkey.
And the remake,
Talk about timing there, yeah.
right, has gotten great reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to talk about that coming up.
And interesting that, you know, because a lot of people quote West Side Story on here, which absolutely those are his lyrics, but not his music, because it's Leonard Bernstein. And I know that a lot of people always question, like, why did you and Bernstein never collaborate again? You're just, you know, it's West Side Story was so good, but maybe it's just because Sondheim just found his own music.
Yeah. I think so. I think after that, I think you're right. Yeah. Elizabeth says, I know it's cliche, but No One Is Alone from Into the Woods has a special place in my heart. I was an intern at the Public Theater the summer before my junior year of college. One of the shows produced that summer at the park was Into the Woods. It was an amazing summer living on my own in New York City, working with such talented professionals, both on and off stage. But that year was incredibly difficult for me, as I lost 3 people that year: a friend in the spring, a professor over the summer, and my grandfather in the fall. That song has always been the one that helps me to get out of my own head when I'm struggling with depression.
Susie says, I've done Side by Side by Sondheim twice. For many years, I sang Send in the Clowns at a little club with a 2-measure start. When I sang it at a theater, it was done with a 4-measure start. I came in too early one time, and the next thing I know, the conductor baton came flying at me. After I finished, I picked it up, thinking it had slipped out of his hand, to find out that he had thrown it at me. Neither of those 2 things happened again. Favorite song, so many, but Losing My Mind for years was my signature song. I even sang it at my wedding.
Oh, wow. Those are a couple of my faves. Losing My Mind, having been able to perform that in Follies, and Send in the Clowns as part of my cabaret act. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
Love it.
Yeah.
Murr says West Side Story has been and always will be my favorite musical. Being a mixed child of Puerto Rican and Polish descent, I always felt a connection to the struggle in the show. I remember when my parents would fight as a child, and I'd put the movie on to drown them out. I'd say to them, look how things turned out when these people fought and had differences. It was my first taste of musical theater. It sparked my love for acting, singing, and dancing. My Titi was a huge fanatic, so she'd tell me all the behind the scenes things she knew. All my love leading up to when I got to meet Stephen Sondheim, and he signed my West Side Story poster. There's magic in that show.
Yeah. See, Michael says, The Road You Didn't Take. This is the one song from Follies that, for me, evokes so many simultaneous emotions. More sorry than grateful, and it truly grates. Anger, regret, sadness for a life unfulfilled. The song bothers the crap out of me. Even as I'm unable to turn it off, I keep listening. That's Sondheim for you. He has a song for everything in life, every experience. One could undoubtedly compile a dictionary of Sondheim song titles covering every feeling contained in the human heart. Or is it the brain? Sondheim was a master juggler of lyrics. His most strident melodies often lyrically revealed just beneath the clinical surface, the depths of love, loss, and unfathomable yearning that plagues the human heart. In an earlier post, I stated that he was not my favorite Broadway composer lyricist, yet I collected every musical title associated with his name. In retrospect, and in the sudden shock of the passing of a 91-year-old man, a titan of talent and artistry, a life so brilliantly creative, it seemed impossible to be snuffed out, I felt the shocking cold water of realization that I was a closet Sondheim fanatic, like all the rest of the suckers who bowed before him. It took his death to find that out. Yeah.
And there was something so alluring in his lyrics and music, even when there was a dissonance about it and made you feel uncomfortable. I think you had to keep going back. There was something in there that somehow you hadn't found.
Yeah.
But if you looked, you would. Pam says, so many wonderful lyrics to choose from, but I'll pick one from a show that for some unknown reason people tend to ignore. Passion. I'll admit it's a strange show, but I absolutely love it. Loving you is not a choice. It's who I am. Loving you is not a choice and not much reason to rejoice, but it gives me purpose. It gives me voice to say to the world, this is why I live. You are why I live. Loving you is why I do the things I do. Loving you is not in my control, but loving you, I have a goal for what's left of my life. I will live and I would die for you. These simple, beautiful words combined with the haunting plaintive melody create a song that brings tears to my eyes every time I hear it.
Yeah. Benjamin says, favorite Sondheim lyric comes from Assassins. Listen to the stories, hear it in the songs. Angry men don't write the rules and guns don't right the wrongs. I find myself constantly quoting it, giving many things that happen now in the world.
That line rings so loudly right now.
Absolutely.
Aileen says, my absolutely favorite lyric is, the choice may have been mistaken. The choosing was not. You have to move on. It's helped me through many situations where I was feeling stuck or broken or a million things. It's just so hard to pick one line of his.
Colleen says, the one that gets used on a weekly basis in our house is the opening to the second act of Sunday in the Park. It's hot up here. It's hot and monotonous. Pretty much comes up anytime our 2- and 5-year-old complain.
I know Colleen, and I know she and her husband are big musical theater fans, and I know the two little ones. I can going on. Adele says, have some tea, some chrysanthemum tea, a slight variation from the normal recipe. The first song of his I ever heard in college. Thought it was totally metal and awesome and like nothing I had ever heard before.
Ryan says, this is a loaded question. I know this is going to sound really like a really mushy story, but I had a really, really tough time when I went away to college. And it was around then that I sat down and listened to the Into the Woods for the first time. No One Is Alone really helped me put things into perspective when I found myself feeling particularly alone at school. And I made it. And then I did Forum as Hysterium, directed by the incomparable Laura Darling. And that was just the best time. She really let me off the leash with playing that character.
And you know, what we're hearing is how his lyrics spoke to the heart of people.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't just a clever turn of the phrase, although goodness knows there were many of those, but they were based on humanity and heart.
So it's almost therapy to listen to Sondheim. Yes.
Where was he when I was a teenager? Golly. Just missed that. I think of some of the other things I played grooves into. Stephen Patterson says, I was in the cast of the West Coast premiere of Assassins at the American Musical Theater of San Jose in California. San Jose was definitely not ready. A good half of the audience deserted before the first hour was up. And there was one night when the patron stood and began screaming obscenities at the actor playing Samuel, is that Bick? And had to be escorted out of the theater. Now, I got to tell you, Ellen, there's a local group that has been toying with producing this. And probably because I saw a very bad production of it at one time, I am opposed to it. So, but after reading these comments and the timeliness, and I get a voice, I get a vote in this. I may be inclined to change my perspective. What do you think? Do you like that show?
I love Assassins. I saw it on Broadway with Neil Patrick Harris. So maybe, first impression was very good. But yeah, I think it's a fascinating show. I can see why some people are not big fans and might be a little, taken back by it, but I think it's good. I think it's a show that makes you think.
Yeah. Do you think that it throws fuel on the fire that we're living? Or does it tamp it down by helping people recognize what's going on?
I think it is more healing than it is igniting. Personally.
Love it. I'm sure our viewers and listeners will check in.
Yeah.
Patrick says, I was with me. I'm going to name names here. Okay. It was Patrick White, and he was with Mary Darcy on Friday evening when Evan Jones asked her to take a seat before he delivered the news that Sondheim had died. Mary had done a phenomenal interview with him at Hudson Valley 8 years ago, which included an unforgettable anecdote about Jerome Robbins improvising Mama Rose's breakdown. Mama's talking loud. Mama's doing fine. Mama's getting hot. Mama's going strong. Mama's moving on. Mama's all alone. Mama doesn't care. When they were under the gun to finish the show, he said Robbins was the only genius he ever met. And that was his definition. And that was his definition of genius, to be endlessly inventive. I think he bore that as well.
Yeah. I see Nick says, there's almost no facet in life to which sorry, grateful isn't perfectly applicable. Yes. But as years pass, yeah, that is very true. But as years pass, I think there's no more better lyric than in No One Is Alone from Into the Woods. Witches can be right. Giants can be good. You decide what's right. You decide what's good. You grow and learn that so much seems arbitrary because it most likely is. None of us have it figured out. Find what works for you and yours, and that's what you do, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, because just remember, no one is alone.
And Brian says, Sunday in the Park, Into the Woods, and Assassins are my personal favorites. Sometimes people leave you halfway through the woods. Do not let it grieve you, or no one leaves for good. I directed Into the Woods and was lucky enough to play, I can't pronounce.
I forgot how this character's name is pronounced.
Dolgaz in Assassins, and was ennobled by both experiences. We Do Not Belong Together breaks my heart anew every time I hear it. Thank you, Mr. Sondheim. Every theater artist owes you a debt.
And then Stephen just has a long lyric for us here. He says, given the ephemeral nature of what we do, I've always loved the lyric for "with so little to be sure of, from anyone can whistle." With so little to be sure of, if there's anything at all, I'm sure of here and now and us together, and I'll ever be, I owe you, if there's anything to be. Being sure enough of you makes me sure enough of me. Thanks for everything we did, everything that's past, everything that's over too fast. None of it was wasted. All of it will last. Everything that's here and now in us, everything that's here and now in us together. It was marvelous to know you, and it isn't really through. Crazy business this life we live in. Can't complain about the time we're given. With so little to be sure of in this world, we had a moment, a marvelous moment.
Which could be said about Mr. Sondheim himself.
Absolutely.
What was your favorite?
My favorite, which I'm sporting on my shirt right now, and talking about therapy, my personal favorite is Sweeney Todd. No one's going to hurt you. No one's going to dare. Others can desert you. Not to worry. Whistle, I'll be there. Demons will charm you with a smile for a while, but in time, nothing can harm you. Not while I'm around.
Mm.
And Benita, that song, that got me through middle school. You're just talking about like where was Sondheim when I was in middle school? I was fortunate enough to have him, and it was a rough time. It was, I was bullied a lot in middle school, and I didn't have many friends. And I literally would wake up in the morning and I would put on this song as like my rally for the day, just reminding myself that like I had people who cared about me, who weren't, that were gonna protect me in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that if I had that, then other people couldn't do damage to me. And those lyrics meant so much.
Mm. He spoke to so many. And it's interesting, some of the shows that are listed here, Passions was not a success.
Well, it's crazy. It won Best Musical, but it was the shortest running Best Musical of all time. Yeah.
My introduction to Sondheim, so it remains probably the sentimental favorite, and I've been blessed to do a number of his shows, but his Company.
Oh, yeah.
And a tiny little role I had in there. I played Susan. It's the couple, they're divorced, but they're back together again. But and a few summers ago, I saw Andrew's Fight. Yes, I always have me in names.
Yeah.
Tveit, the musical.
Oh, Aaron Tveit.
Tveit. See, I can't even pronounce it. Somebody's going, come on, Benita. But I saw him as Bobby.
Oh, yeah.
The whole cast, they had sort of reimagined without losing what the show was.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that show speaks to the humanity, the loneliness in everyone, and the searching we all do to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of those characters. Ladies Who Lunch is it's a scene, I chew the scenery, right? Everybody, but it's a heartbreaking song.
Yeah.
But that whole show is about yearning to connect. Another 100 people, that's the in your face one.
Mm-hmm. And someone to hold me too close.
Right.
Someone to hurt me too deep.
Someone to sit in my chair and ruffle my hair, ruin my sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's the human conundrum.
Mm-hmm.
How do we find it? How do we keep it? Can you chase it? So that remains my fave of all his shows. And I saw the version in the city where they're all playing musical instruments and walking around in the square. And the square, in my mind, the sort of the box that we all live in. So anyway, but
isn't it fascinating, Benita, that with all these comments, we checked off almost all all of his big works, like every single big piece of his meant something to someone.
Right. So the heck with those critics who said, but I didn't come out singing his tunes. No, you came out with something much more enduring. Mm-hmm. A place in your heart that was touched and perhaps forever changed. Yeah. So, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Which one do you still want to do? What show haven't you done with Sondheim that you'd still like to do, Ellen?
Well, still, Sweeney Todd is the top of the list forever, but I'd also want to do Into the Woods anytime, any day. I've only done one Sondheim. I did Forum when I was younger. And, and as you said, it's like such a different, Sondheim show, but oh my goodness, that show is so fun. Yeah. That'd be a good one to direct.
Follies again.
Yeah.
And this time playing Phyllis. I've done her, leave you, how could I leave you? I've done that, in cabaret, and it's earth scorching, but it's also about the human connection and not.
Yeah.
All comes down to that. But yeah, there's so much.
There's so many. That's why one of my dream roles besides Mrs. Lovett would be the witch from Into the Woods, because what a beautifully complex character. She's the villain who, then she sings Last Midnight and you're like, oh my gosh, she has so much and she sings, Children Will Listen.
Yes.
And it's the most beautiful piece of music in that whole show, in my opinion. And, she cares so much for Rapunzel, she's such a in-depth character. She has so many layers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that song is just so layered, and for you as a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love the, princes wait there in the world, it's true. Princes, yes, but wolves and humans too.
Right.
Oh, that's so true.
Yes.
And you don't,
and Demons and Dragons appear in some of his shows because Anyone Can Whistle also deals with that. Slaying dragons. Anyone can whistle. I can, say, I think it says, I can slay a dragon. You see, but so you wonder about what tormented him.
Yeah, well, I know he had a very bad relationship with his mother growing up.
Yes.
I was reading his biography and basically disowned her and a very tough childhood. So it's interesting to see the impact that's had on his writing.
It's a sense of loss and belonging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, I'd love to play Desiree.
Oh, he'd be beautiful as Desiree.
I think that would be, I could cast that while we're sitting right here, but we'd have fun. Anyway, so much given. And in the end, I think it comes down to you, the individual audience member, sitting in that darkened room, listening to the words and connecting with what's going on, and recognizing in that moment as you sit in an audience that you're not alone. You have a community just for a brief time. And you don't have to worry about getting them over for Hanukkah, Christmas, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
This was fun, Ellen.
This was. And we'll see. I haven't looked up anything about whether the work that he was working on will come to light. We'll have to kind of, look into that and let our listeners know if we hear anything.
Yeah. I suspect that even unfinished, it will find spotlight in some fashion.
Yeah.
Sure. Unless he specifically left in a will that any unfinished work not be produced.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Oh, this was lovely. And really, I think, as one of our listeners said it, he was a titan that just seems like he would have lived forever, but he does in these beautiful songs that we will have forever and ever.
We had a moment, a marvelous moment.
Oh, if life were made of moments, even though and then a bad one. But if life were made of moments, how would you even know you had one?
Exactly. So now we're going to have to start thinking about what we want to talk about our next Backstage, but we'll post that on Facebook. And maybe we'll be looking ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds good to me.
Okay.
And speaking of looking ahead, listeners, remember this weekend, the Christians at Albany Barn with Harmony Theater And it's very exciting because it's Patrick White's new theater that we're going to celebrate. We love Patrick. And speaking of Patrick, it's our tradition that we have him on the show along with Chris Foster at the end of every season to kind of talk about the theater and especially in the local area, because they see almost everything there is to see. So check out next episode. We're going to have our lovely gentleman to talk about this past year's theater.
Yeah, we were over in the Berkshires a few weeks ago, the Hubs and I, seeing Mr. Saturday Night. And my husband goes, "Isn't that Christopher over there?" Sure enough, the fellas were there as well. I said, "Now I know theater's back. I'm seeing you and Patrick out at the theater."
Exactly. Wonderful. All right, guys. So yeah, check out that episode and check out our Facebook page for our next Backstage chat topic.
And when you go see the Christians, let them know that you heard their ad right here on Everything Theater.
And if you want to be promoted, send us a message. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later. Thank you so much for listening to the Everything Theater podcast. Special thanks goes out to Alice Grinling for our photography and Justin Friello for composing our amazing theme song. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to share your thoughts or what's going on in your theater community, you can reach out to us on social media or through our email at everythingtheaterpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, it's everything, everything, everything.